All right, everybody, welcome to another edition of the Leadership Blend with your host, Ricardo D. Rice. Now, look, y'all know how I get about certain things. You know I like the truth. I like to find truth clarifiers, myth busters. And today is a really big one because we all know that everybody, it doesn't matter what conversation you talk about, whether it be nonprofit, whether it be real business, whether it be for business, whether it be for profit, whether it be religion, everybody always talking about grants. How I'll just write a grant, or, I need a grant writer, and so on and so forth. So I've been on the hunt. I didn't tell Ms. Linda this, but I've been on the hunt for a good person who can break this down and really get into grant writing and what it is and really just dig into it so that people can walk away with a deeper understanding of what a grant is. Do I have to pay it back? Is it limited to just nonprofits? All of that good stuff. So today, the boss lady is here.
Ms. Contracts and Grants, that's me.
Up for us today. So I'm beyond excited to have this lady. And really quickly, I will tell you how I met this woman. We were laughing about it before we got on air. I was at a conference, and this amazing lady was sitting on a panel about, 6, 7 people? It was about 6 or 7 people on that panel. And she was the sore thumb. She completely stood out. She was checking folks. And this was not an all-black panel. It was a mixture. She was checking folks. She was dispelling myths and rumors. She was going in, and I was recording. So I was sitting yes! I got to get you. I got to get you. So, finally, I have been able to get her from her busy schedule, and we had to reschedule a couple of times. It was all me. So I am so happy and honored to have this amazing woman. I'm going to stop talking because y'all know how excited I get to have great people. So I'm going to let her introduce herself and tell a little bit about who she is and her background. So Ms. Linda, take it away.
Okay, hey there. Hey, everybody. My name is Linda Chatmon, and I am the owner and CEO of Contracts and Grants, LLC. We are a consulting firm that specializes in growing businesses through contracts and grants technology and e-learning. Been responsible for about $12.2 billion in contracts and grants awards over the years. So we know a little bit of something about how to do it. I'm a subject matter expert for Syracuse University, Florida State University, and LSU for government contracts and grants. And I am also an instructor where I teach grant writing, grant management, and cost principles to HHS, which CDC falls under. It is the largest grant-making agency of the government. So I get to teach the people who give the money away. So I kind of know, where people are missing the boat. And so I'm hoping I can help you today. They call me Ms. Contracts and Grants, which of course is where you can find me on Instagram. But I pretty much, that's my lane, contracts and grants.
See, y'all owe me, because this, to find a subject matter expert with that much experience and that much working knowledge, yeah, y'all owe me. So let's get into it. So let's start
jump right in. So, okay.
What exactly is a grant, and how does it differ from a loan, things of that magnitude? What exactly is a grant?
Okay, a grant is an instrument that is used to give people, organizations, the opportunity to do a greater good for usually on behalf of someone else, whether it's a foundation, all the rich people, they have, they have foundations, or it can be the government, or it can be anybody who wants to give money to someone to help them do something in particular. Now, there are 3, I'll say, instruments that the government uses to do that. And they're available to for-profit and nonprofits. They're grants, which we just talked about. Contracts, where the government will actually contract with you to do something in particular on their behalf. And then there's cooperative agreements. A cooperative agreement is when the government will give you usually stuff. They'll give you technical assistance. They'll give you the people. They might let you give you some office space. So a cooperative agreement with SBA, they do a lot of them. where they had, you'll see a lot of people say Women's Center funded by SBA. It simply means that the SBA has entered into an agreement with them where they're going to help them achieve something in particular. And in the case with SBA, it's helping small businesses, get started or get, not necessarily get funded because that is a source of funding, but get started and any technical assistance like, business plan writing and stuff like that. So it's important that you know the difference between the three. So when you're having that conversation with the grant maker or the grant seeker, you're using the right terminology. Just think of contracts are what you're going to sell your services. Grants are when you were looking for funding to do something in particular. I hope that helps.
All right. So, look, for those who do not know, I usually do with acronyms. I usually break down what an acronym is. So SBA, for those that do not know, Small Business Association. So that everybody knows when she uses some of these terms.
Small Business Administration.
Administration. So that's what SBA stands for. All right, so let's stay there. That's a good point. So let's stay there. So starting with the grant, let's say I'm a church and I'm a nonprofit. Do I need to have 501c3 in order to apply for a grant and be incorporated?
Well, if you are a church, you get automatic status. It's because you are charitable and religious promotion is what you are doing. You are, you have a group of people and you are influencing them in a particular way for a religious purpose. Now, as long as you do that, as long as you stay in that lane, you don't need a 501c3. It's automatically granted. But a lot of churches don't. Next thing you know, you got a lot of churches, they want to build housing for the senior citizens. That is not religious promotion. That is a nonprofit driven, and you do have to have a 501c3 for that. And so you want to make sure that if you are a church, continue to save souls. Once you stop saving souls and do something else, even though it's for the greater good, then, and I'll give you an example. People be like, well, wait a minute, we feed the homeless. That's great. That's charitable. But you might want to pass out a pamphlet or something because the whole goal is, you're supposed to help the people, feed the hungry and do everything. But at the same time, the whole goal, the whole mission behind your organization as defined by the IRS is to save souls.
Okay. So when you say that are we talking about you have to be incorporated as a nonprofit?
Do you have to be incorporated? Yeah, well, you have to have a nonprofit organization has to be incorporated because it starts with a business. So in other words, when you go to the Secretary of State and you start your business, it is a business first. You designate if it is a for-profit or a nonprofit, but either way, it is incorporated. And so therefore, once you incorporate as a nonprofit, the only difference between a for-profit corporation and a nonprofit corporation as far as the government is concerned is you have to register it with the nonprofit with a charitable office in the state, because a lot of times if you're accepting money from people, the government wants to know that you are on an approved list. And a lot of people don't realize that, but in the state of Georgia, you have to register your nonprofit as a charitable entity because people are going to be giving you funds.
Okay, so in that space right there, so if I want to be able to tell people that they can write it off on their taxes, the contributions that they give to my organization, do I need to be a 501c3 to do that, or can I just?
Yes, no.
Okay.
501c3 is what allows your contribution to be tax exempt. But with the new laws now, it's all one pot. You don't get deductions anymore. You get one pot. It's still tax deductible, but how you use that is, the IRS has all these new laws, which I am not an expert on, but I do know that they lump everything all together now as of this year. I believe it is. Yeah, this year. It's a great time to be in business because you used to.
So when you say lump all together.
Yeah, you used to itemize.
Okay.
You don't itemize now. You just say, here it is. So it's kind of reduced the need for a 501c3 because you get one lump sum, like I think $14,000 or something like that. So if you were spending $10,000 or $15,000 to a charitable organization, or you could have, $10,000 or $100,000 worth of deductions. But now the government decides what your deduction amount is going to be based on, whether or not you're married, filing jointly, and all that kind of stuff. But as it relates to nonprofit and giving, yes, in order to get tax exempt status, you must have a 501c3, and the person who wants to get it as a tax write-off typically want a copy of your letter, your 501c3 letter.
Yeah. All right. So I like this space because I have a lot of preacher friends I have to fight with all the time about this stuff. So I want to get all this out.
And please tell them about the private inurement. Let me just go there right now. And they don't mean it. They just don't know. Private inurement is when you benefit privately from your association with a nonprofit. Okay, newsflash. No one owns a nonprofit except the state. You're a nonprofit. I hear people say, "Oh, I own 3." No, you don't. You don't own anything because it belongs to the state. Now, as a founder, you will always be the founder. And you might even be the executive director, but you're never going to be the owner. All right. So let's be clear on that. The second thing is you got a lot of people who have nonprofit organizations and for-profit organizations, and they think they're doing a great thing by letting them work together. Well, I do this with my nonprofit, and then my nonprofit pays my for-profit for my books. No, that's private inurement. You cannot, 100% cannot benefit from your relationship with your nonprofit organization. So using that same example, I'll use it for your church friends, okay? Let's just say pastor has and I actually ran into this. Pastor has a funeral home, owns a funeral home, okay? Or a florist. Let's just say a florist. Now, if the church buys from the funeral home, okay, and he is a governing, now, this only happens if he's a person of the governing board, on the governing board, okay? Because the fact, like, as long as he's not the executive director or the founder, but most preachers are, because you're talking about your smaller churches. So if you're the executive director or the founder of the church, and you are responsible for the decision making, you can't buy from yourself. That's called self-dealing. If real estate, another place a lot of people make a mistake. They think that I'm going to go out and buy my house, and then I'm going to get the nonprofit to pay the rent. No, you can't do that. So as long as you keep in mind that what you cannot benefit privately from your association with the nonprofit, that will keep you in the safe lane. Doing business with your nonprofit is never a good idea because the lines are so, blurred, okay? Now, a nonprofit can have a for-profit subsidiary. Then it's okay because all the money that the for-profit makes then goes back to the nonprofit. So if you want to sell chicken and, have a restaurant, why not? If I'm a nonprofit organization, I'd have a restaurant. I'd have a restaurant, I have a clothing store, I have it all. Because now those businesses, every profit comes and now you can do more good work because now you're taking the profits. And I think that is probably the best way to do it. And I tell people, every church, every member in the church, they could be their own mini Amazons. Everybody has a store. Everybody has a store in them. People buy stuff. Why not buy it from you?
Okay, so let me get this straight. So you're saying that you can have a for-profit with like a nonprofit, or a nonprofit with for-profit arm.
Subsidiary.
That's what you're saying?
Yes. And that's a great way that's a great funding strategy. There's a lot of people who go out and they get the 501c3, and I'm like, okay, you got your 501c3. Why did you even get your 501c3 if you don't have a grant strategy? If you're not going to be going after grants, why even get the 501c3? That's paperwork that's going to sit on your drawer. So if you're not going to have a grant writing component, then okay, sell stuff. That's called program income. Program income is when you sell stuff or you generate revenue on behalf of the organization to, most of the time for operational expenses. But there's so much money out there in terms of grants right now. If you're not writing grants, I'm just not having any understanding of it. I really don't.
All right, so let me ask this, Master. I want to get all this out while we in this whole church space.
Okay.
So if I have an industry and I decide that I want to build a community center, and I get a 501c3,
yep,
is that a good idea to write a grant for, to be able to get that community center?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, because that's going to be what they call community development block grants. Yeah. So the whole part of the funding strategy is deciding which funds you're going to go after. And I know we're going to talk a little bit later in the segment about grant writers and grant writing and why people are winning and why people are losing. And we'll talk a little, because grant writers have gotten, you know, they got the raw deal, some of them rightfully so. But I think for just a strategy, if you have a nonprofit organization, at a minimum, you should be sending out 5 project abstracts every day, which is really just a synopsis of what it is that you're trying to do, because you're not going to have 15 minutes to pitch your program to everybody. Get you a project summary. It's a 1-pager. You send it out 5 times a day to somebody who's giving money. Make sure you find out they're giving money for your purpose. And then if you do that every day, that's 20. That's 20 people that you have knocked on a door and said, hey, I'm looking for funding for my organization. At least 2 of them are going to respond back, well, hey, you know what? I really like your program. It'd be really, really nice if you would respond to this. Our application is due XYZ. And that is a great way. Another funding strategy is that you can always go to other nonprofits who already have the money. The government, Salvation Army, Catholic charities, they got the money already. Okay, maybe you don't have the staff to do grant writing, but you still have a great program. Well, Salvation Army is really, really known for putting people to work. They're really, really well known for getting people, you know, jobs and financial literacy. They might not be that great at you know, entrepreneur development. So if you got entrepreneur development, go sell it to them. That's a contract. That is the difference between a grant and a contract. You're going to go to the Salvation Army, the people who got the funds, and sell them your program, and they're going to buy it from you, and you are going to, so same objective, you've just gone about it a different way. The goal is to help people. So if you can do it through a contract, do it through a contract. If you can do it for a grant, great, but you've got to be consistent with your grant process and your strategies by going after grants every single day.
All right. So while we're here, let's start the grant process. So
Okay.
if I'm a nonprofit and I decide I want to write a grant, where do I start? Like where do I start?
Well, the first thing is you got to have that project abstract. And the reason I keep talking about that project abstract is when it's got to be it's like your elevator pitch on and everything you go after is going to ask you the same information. So just have the document in front of you, cut and paste, cut and paste, cut and paste. You're going to identify the opportunity. So you're going to go out to all the all the grant sites. You got grants.gov, you got a Foundation Center, you've got Grant Watch. Those are 3. And you just, you know, you research. They tell you everything you could possibly want to know. Who the person gave money to last, where they're located. So not only do you have a list of all the grants that are being that are being funded, you've got a list of the people who got it last time. So if you want to market to them, you can, or you can market directly to the funding source. But research is crucial. You know, don't go after grant. If you got a program for the homeless, don't go after the grant for the person who is looking to you know, for childcare. Save yourself some time and some frustration. And that's why I'm talking about, you know, in terms of, you know, winning and losing and getting a high probability of win, you've got to do that. And you've got to do that in a way that starts with research, your probability of win. What is the likelihood that I will win this opportunity? Well, I can tell you what it's not. You're not going to get funded if, in fact, they funded the exact same thing with a company down the street. Do your research. Who's around you? Who does what you do? Collaborate. If there's 500 people doing daycare within a certain mile radius, that funding is going to one company. Okay, so research is key.
All right. So how long should this program abstract be, or is it like a hit? What, who, why, where type deal?
It's who, what problem are you solving? And it should be 1 page. And we'll talk about it a little bit later because I got all those tutorials on my website. People can just click and go and click on them, and it'll walk you through step by step by step. And it's 1 page. But so the goal is so that you can take it at a glance and look and know whether or not that's some money that you want to spend, that you want to give money to. And it shouldn't be all
right, so
bulleted, not a whole bunch of words, just bullets. 25 people.
Straight to it.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. So once I identified, who finished my project abstract, identified some grants that I may want to apply to. So what do I do then? Do I what should be my next process?
Okay, the next step is, like I said, all right, you got your project abstract, you've identified them. You're going to send them that project abstract. Okay. Let's just say you got a spreadsheet. You got 25 names on there. I sent this one, this one, this one, this one. Each one is going to come back and give you a response. What you want is an invitation to bid. And if you get an invitation to bid, you're winning. And that means that an invitation to bid means that they like what you have so much they're inviting you to bid. Because rarely will you see, in some instances you will, like the smaller grants, like Grants Watch. They're smaller grants. They're people, 2,000, 3,000. I think I posted the other day where they're giving grants to entertainers that have been impacted by COVID to pay their household bills. Those are 2,000, 3,000, not usually a large foundation, but but those, you can apply right then and there. Other ones, it's a long, it's a grant, it's a RFP that you have to respond to, but they won't invite you to do that. So that you won't see copies of RFPs out there because they want to limit the number of people who respond to the people who they know are eligible. That's why they usually request a project abstract first. Sometimes they call them project inquiries, and sometimes they call them project summaries, but they're all the same thing. They're simply summarizing your program.
Okay, so before I do this, I'm thinking and listening. So before I do this, should I already have like a budget for all this stuff and like the whole shebang so that when they invite me and ask more questions, I can say, well, here's the budget that I created for this project, so on and so forth? Or should I do what you're saying?
Oh, no. Well, maybe let me go back a step because I made an assumption. I'm assuming that you're already in business, okay? If you're already in business, you must have a budget. So, okay, let me go back then. Okay, if you are just starting and you're not already operating, meaning you don't have financials, you don't have a budget. See, your project summary is just that. It's a project summary of the whole thing. So you should have a whole thing somewhere. Now, you can do it one of two ways. You can start with the project abstract and then flush that out into something big, or you already have a business plan or some other document that you're using for your program. Because right now, if you're already doing it, you got your curriculum. You got how much it costs per student. So if you're not, yes, for sure, because that's what's got to be on the project summary. In your project summary, they're asking you how much money you need, how long it's going to take, and how many people are you going to help. So your budget has got to be, whether it's a per person unit for if you're doing tutoring or training, or if it's something else, and I need 5,000 for food because I'm, feeding the homeless. I want to have 12 pounds of food per day or whatever. But yeah, just so I'm clear, I'm assuming that the majority of your audience are people who are already in business doing what they do. They just want to do more of it through grants. So yeah, budget is paramount for sure.
It's big. So there are some people that are already in business, and then there are some people who have been thinking about it, and now that COVID has kind of made them be home, now they're like, well, since I'm home, I can finally work on it. So let me tune in and see what so on and so forth. All right. So when we talk budget, say for the newbie, if we talk budget, should these numbers be kind of inflated numbers, or should they be as precise as possible?
Okay, well, I'm always looking at things from an evaluator's perspective, okay? So I'm going to say, if you don't know enough about what you are doing to tell me how much it costs and the outcomes I'm going to get, that's going to show in your presentation. That's why they always ask for what is called a cost narrative. I mean, at a minimum, if you already have it figured out, I always work backwards. Okay, so what do you want your outcome to be? Let's use, let's use financial literacy or mentoring. I won't say what they call it, after school program. Okay. All right. Well, I know that you want to help people the kids learn how to read, but what does that mean? Okay. Your end result needs to be that 10 people came into my classroom. They were reading at grade level. I mean, at below their grade level. And when they finished the program, they were now reading one grade level ahead. You've got, okay, now you're saying, okay, that's what they did. Now you're going to tell me, how much did it cost to do that? Okay, well, how many tutors did you need? Do you need one tutor or two? Do you need some supplies? Do you need some books and pencils? What all do you need to be able to achieve those results? So if you have to get out of the mindset of activity. Like, I'm just going to do something. You've got to look at the outcome and then work backwards about how much it costs to provide the outcome that you want to provide.
All right, so when we talk about, let's say with the example of the after school program. So let's say I want to have an after school program and I want a building as to house this, because I know you can do partnerships with other people and say, hey, we want to put our program in your spacing because we think you have the space. But if I decide I want a standalone building to house my program, how does that look? Is it easier to collaborate to do that?
I'm going to be very honest with you. Now, there's some people who are going to give you funding, people who are going to want to partner with you. They're going to want to see some results because they're investing in you. Maybe if a person is giving you a building, okay, he could be charging rent for that building. And maybe he's leaning toward allowing you to use it for your program because it's a good, but you got to convince me that there's going to be some results. But what that looks like is before I would ask for a building, okay, I would have some results of my program. So by the time I ask for the building, somebody's going to say yes because I proved that it works. I would not, unless you already have support. Now, if you already have support and you already got operating expenses, but to on day one, decide that as a nonprofit organization, you need a building, you're putting the cart way before the horse. You got to have some results. Start it in your basement. Go to somebody else's building. Start it in a co-op. What do you call it? No, those spaces.
Co-working space.
Co-working space. Do something, anything to get some results. If it's only 2 people, I help, 100% of my people, 100% of my participants now read above, their grade level. Okay, well, 100% might only be 2, but you've done it. You have a track record. People are going to give you funding when there's a track record and there's a story behind the track record. There's a story, and your story has to match theirs, or at least their objectives. And the one thing about these sites is they tell you what their objectives are. A lot of them are humanitarian, some of them. So if you can relate to the objectives of the funding that you're looking for in your cover letter. Now, granted, you can send your project abstract, you can send out 5 of those, but your cover letter needs to be talking to the person you're sending it to. Don't send a cover letter. It's generic. Send a cover letter to say, I'm writing to you because I know that you have a sweet spot for homelessness, as stated in your 3 key objectives, which are, I believe that my program meets these objectives because we aim to blankety blank, blank, blank. Let it go. And that way everybody gets a personalized letter. Those are the ones that get attention because it means you read, you did research, you actually listened to what I had to say versus just asking me for some money.
You're killing me. You're killing me, Miss Linton. Like, all is good. You're killing me. Like, I wish I was listening right now. Like, I wish I was on the other side. Like, this is amazing. All right, so this is good. All right, I don't want to spend too much time with nonprofits, but I got one more question that should kill all my friends off. So what you're saying is to kill all my friends off. So what you're saying is it's almost easier to go ahead and experiment with what you want to do. Like, let's say with the after school program, and let's say you have a church, to do it after hours when the church is closed, to actually get it up and running and then ask for money to expand the program versus just kind of jumping out there with abstract numbers or things of that magnitude. So that's kind of what you're saying.
Right. That's exactly right. Because, yeah, that's the best way. Now, has it happened that people have gotten startup funds? Probably, but they probably went through, they probably spent $1 gazillion. Narrow your focus on those people who fund what you fund. That's the first part, because that's the research compartment. And then you got to sell your program the same way you sell your services. And the way you sell services or sell products is you've got to be relatable. People are going to buy, whether it's hair products or shoes or your program. You still got to have some compelling information that will make a person want to strike and write a check. They just don't have a bunch of funds and say, any, meeny, miny, mo, I'm gonna give it to this one, to give it that one. You got to tell a compelling story.
Okay. All right, my church friends, I'm done with y'all. Y'all got all y'all need. I'm done with y'all. That's there you go. So you ain't got no excuse to be harassing me from here on out. There you go. I'm paid to go watch the replay. All right. So let's shift to contracts. So this is the part I'm actually kind of interested in. So contracts can go for nonprofit and for-profit, right?
That is correct. Well, grants can too now. The nonprofit, I mean, grants are for for-profits and nonprofits. So, I mean, I want to make sure you're clear that there's a lot of grants out there for for-profits. So, I mean, the process is the same in terms of how you go about finding them and doing and that whatnot. But there's a lot of grants out there for for-profits, and it tells you in the eligibility requirements. It tells you who's eligible. It will tell you for-profits, nonprofits, municipalities, states, tribals. You'll see the term IHEs. IHE stands for Institute of Higher Education. So that means this is a grant for colleges or a university or something. But every grant will tell you who's eligible for going after that grant. And right now, there's a lot of grants out there for for-profits.
Wow, nice.
Just wanted to be clear about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I was thinking about contracts. Like I said, it's a mindset thing. You hear people say things, and it's kind of the way you think about it. So that's kind of. So the process for contracts, is it completely different? Does it look slightly the same? How does that process look?
Well, you mean for-profits or for nonprofits wanting to get a contract? Because those are two different things. If you've got a nonprofit organization wanting to sell their services to the government as a vendor, that looks very much like the contract process, because it's usually in response to an RFP. You are, again, selling your services. But federal acquisitions, in terms of going after contracts with the federal government, is totally different in terms of how you respond. And pricing. You don't have a budget, you have pricing. And every contract that is out there that the government buys is out there. You can find it. By law, every single thing that the government buys, they buy it from a particular place. And so you just go to the marketplace, see what they're buying. Well, not necessarily, look to see if what you're selling, they're buying. But the RFP process is totally different. The marketing process is totally different.
All right, so let's get into the, well, let me see what time it's 12:40. Ah, God, I'm gonna have to do a part two. You're killing me. I'm gonna do a part two of this.
Yeah, I don't mind.
I can't even get into all of this so much. All right, let me. I'm not even gonna go there because I said grant, so we'll have to do another show on contract.
Okay, that'll work. That'll work. We'll do another one on federal and defense contracts.
Yeah, we'll do that one. Let's stay in grants. I told her about the grants today, so we'll stay in grants. All right, so let's shift to media, because I told my friends I would cover media today as it pertains to grants. So what does that look like? Like if I say, let's say I have because I remember you talking vaguely on the panel about it, which kind of got my antennas up. You were saying something about an independent filmmaker has a film they want to make that is like on homeless or something, and they can get a grant because a company may be interested in something.
Oh man, there's one out there now, and I looked to make sure it was still up before I came. I forgot what the name of it is, but there's one just for filmmakers. They're actually looking for independents to come and do like documentaries and stuff like that. I'll probably go over it Friday, but yeah, I forget who the funding source. It's not a government agency. It is a foundation. Forget which one it is, but they are looking, and there's a lot of that. Again, most people don't do the research. I tell people an hour a day. Don't try to bite off more than you can chew. Spend one day identifying opportunities. Okay. Then maybe the next day you do the research. And then the next day, maybe you send them the project abstract. But if you try to do it all in one day, I have found that you get frustrated or you get interrupted, but you can do anything for an hour. But people have gotten so much information that they put it on their desk and they never go back because they feel like they got to do the whole thing all at one time, and you don't. Especially, I mean, man, even with nonprofits, organizations, and churches, guys, get you 5 or 6 volunteers. One person is good at research. Get the little girl who's good at research, tell her to research these grants, and I want you to look for grants that have this, 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 and in it. Okay, well, maybe somebody else is a good writer. Okay, have that person write the cover letter. And then maybe the next person go out and find the opportunities. But if you will assign 1 hour a day to your volunteers to the point where you're getting out 5 abstracts a day, and you're talking about 20 a week, 100 a month, you're going to have some activity. And you're not asking a person for 8 hours. You're asking them for 1 hour. And I don't know anybody who's a volunteer that would not give you 1 hour in their area of expertise. But now the key to getting good volunteers is keep them in a space that's comfortable for them. Don't take them out their lane, because that's a whole nother story. So if you've got somebody who's a good writer, there's a lot of people who in HR, they know how to do research. So you use your volunteers.
Okay, so if I'm an independent filmmaker and I've decided that I want to go after a grant to fund my film,
yep,
is that process still the same? I still need the project abstract. Do I need to have a film that I've already done, or that they can see, or what do I actually need to be?
Yeah, okay, think about it. So now your film is no different than the end result of a program. You've got evidence, anything that you have that indicates that I'm good enough at this, that you should give me money to do more of it or to do your project. Okay, so I think in the filming industry, get me wrong, tell me if I'm wrong, I think, what is it called, a treatment or something like that? Is that what y'all call it? A treatment. Okay, so probably a treatment is the same thing as a project summary, or at least the information that's in a treatment is used to create a summary. So you don't want to recreate the wheel. You want enough information that a person who knows film, which by the way I do not, they would know from how you wrote it that this is a perfect opportunity for me to call this person and interview them. So whether it's film work or artwork or designer, I had a grant the other day I posted. Somebody was funding African American designers. I'm like, somebody's giving money for you to be a designer. Okay, that's just an application. Sometimes it's not even a whole grant. Sometimes it's just an application that got maybe 10 questions on it. You should be clicking on those every day. But there's plenty of money out there for arts, cultural stuff, entertainment, because entertainment is suffering right now. And I think we talked a little bit about it earlier about relief. COVID, take advantage of the COVID funding. As long as you got a COVID spin on it, they got to spend this money by the end of December. And what they don't spend, they got to give back. So all the states and cities and municipalities that got all this COVID money, they have to have that money spent. So if you go out to City of Atlanta or whatever your state is and see how much funding they got, then you know that they got it. And now a lot of it's gone now because it's August and they got to have it spent by December. But it's out there. You just got to stay on those websites, and you got to just activity 1 hour a day. You can do it in 1 hour a day.
All right, so let's shift to rumors and myths about grant writers.
Okay.
So let's get into that. So what should
go ahead. No, you go ahead.
No, what was you about to say?
I was going to say the number one, and I know I'm going to bust a lot of people's hearts right now, is you cannot pay a grant writer out of the funds of the grant that you receive. That is illegal. That is the number one rule in cost principles. The fact is, most people don't even realize that. And then they say, well, wait a minute, if I don't have any money, how can I pay you? Well, that right there is an issue why you should always have program income or have a way, but you are not allowed to pay grant writers from the funding. Now, if you have another pot, you just can't use those funds because they're considered pre-program expenses, and those are not covered, meaning you can't spend money on a program that hasn't even started yet. And the other one is that people blame grant writers when they don't win. Now, some of that falls on the grant writer, and it could be he does not tell a compelling story. But I have found that a lot of times that the information that they're given to write the program, they expect writers to write the program, not just respond to the grant. So I've had people approach me and say, well, can you write this grant? I'm thinking, well, you're going to give me all your program information and I'm going to write it in response to what they're asking for. They send me a brochure. I'm like, what am I going to do with this? It's a brochure. I'm like, well, where's your program at? Where's what you're gonna do? Oh, we don't. So now what they call grant writing is really program development. And so you're asking someone who knows absolutely nothing about your program to develop it. Oh, and by the way, can you get some funding for it too? That's kind of unfair. Yeah, a good grant writer, as good as a grant writer is, they might not know about how to find homes for the homeless. I don't. I can speak to your program. If you give me the information, I can turn it into what the government wants to see and how they want to see it in terms of compliance and responsiveness. But I can't create the program. I can't tell you what you do, the steps you take to go get it done. So that's why a lot of grants aren't won, because they don't talk about, I'll put it this way, they give the ingredients, not the recipe. And when you win a grant, you got to walk people step by step of what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, and the and the outcome and the impact that it is going to have to that community, and why, if they don't give you the money, what a shame it's going to be for the community. And not in a threatening way, but in a, this is why we need it so bad. We need funding to mentor young men, and then give them some statistics, X% of crime is committed in this area among these group of teenagers, blah, blah, blah. Oh, and by the way, the outcome is going to be, we're going to have these kids in a program from 4 to 8 during the time where most crimes are committed. So now the outcome is, we don't have these little boys on the street breaking into your house. That's how you want to explain how it benefits them.
Okay, so because this is the part I think everybody gets lost in the shuffle on, that the outcomes are just as important as the program itself. You being able to explain what the outcomes are going to be if we fund your program. I think that's the part people get lost on.
Most people don't know, and training is the number. You're absolutely right, because people, they can't tell me when I'm asking them, when I'm interviewing them. Okay, I get that you're training, but training, okay, you want somebody to pay you for 40 hours of training. That's great, but what did that deliver? What did your program deliver? What did your teenage pregnancy if you're telling me that you have a program that addresses teenage pregnancies, I need to know that somebody didn't get pregnant. I need to know that I need to know at the end of your program, if you had 10 little girls, if every one of them ended up pregnant, I probably won't fund your program. I'm just saying that it's got to have some outcomes, measurable outcomes, by the way, not just people showed up. And you'll see that too. And it burns me up when I go to an event and the first thing they tell you, sign in. Because for most people, the only evidence of them doing anything is the sign-in sheet. I'm like, okay, you got 15 people who signed in. Yay, you're going to get a check because 15 people signed in. I'm more concerned, and grant makers are more concerned about what happened when those people left.
Okay. Wow, that's I had my dog question. Last with you, I lost my question. I had my question. I was on the roll. Okay, I remember. Okay, so staying in that lane, do I need to create a rubric? The people that want the grant, do we need to create a rubric by which we can say, this is how we're going to come to this outcome? So staying with the pregnancy thing, our rubric is, we have 15 girls that we intake, and they go through this program for 2 months, and at the end of this 2 months, 15 of them are wiser about birth control, they're wiser about contraception, all that good stuff, and they're not pregnant. Like, is that the kind of rubric you should...
Well, in that particular case, the only way that particular case said, and you said something, let me clear that. The deliverable can never be knowledge. It's how that knowledge is applied. The fact that I know not to get pregnant, you can't measure that. Okay. What you've got to say now, the way that you would use that is, I would go to a community where 50% of the women who are the people, teenagers living in this zip code get pregnant. Now, pull 10 out, and if they graduate and none of them are pregnant, that's when that would matter. That type of outcome would only matter when the people that you're pulling from are most likely to be pregnant or get pregnant. Okay, because you're going to show that it works. That's how you want to do that. Same thing with any knowledge-driven program. It really is about the outcome of that program, and that's what proves that what you taught them works. There's just no other way around that.
Okay. All right. So let's stay with grant writers. So what is real expectation of a grant writer? Because I can't pay you out of the grant. That's illegal. So everybody heard that. That's illegal. You cannot pay a grant writer out of a grant. So let's get rid of that. Anybody ever asked me, I'm going to embarrass you. I'm like, look, Miss Linda told me it's illegal for me to tell you that you can write yourself into this grant to get paid. That's illegal.
Right. That's
you cannot do that.
It's called contingency fees, and they're not. The actual language is contingency fees, and that's not allowed.
All right. So what is a real expectation of a grant writer outside of, oh, I expect you to get the grant? Like, what should I really expect them to do if I hire a grant writer? What's within their scope?
First of all, you should have a clearly defined performance work statement or scope of work that defines what you expect them to do. Some people want them to find it, write it, come up with the budget, everything. Okay, that's probably unrealistic. And everything is different, because there's some who just want to write the RFP and they expect you to have some type of program attached to it. So I think the biggest myth or the biggest issue that people have with grant writers is they expect them to create the whole program, and they're just not there to do that. A good grant writer really is just a good, strong proposal writer. Okay, what people define as grant writers most of the case, what they really need is somebody who's a program developer, someone who can develop programs. How that person communicates that through paperwork, that's a good proposal writer who just happens to be writing a grant, but it's always going to be in response to a proposal or some type of submission paperwork. And there's an eligibility component. So a grant writer there's three things, whether it's a grant writer or whether it's a proposal writer, there are three areas. You've got relevance, meaning how relevant is what you do to this grant? How do your objectives line up with their objectives? Then you have relevance, you have responsibleness, responsible, meaning that you have responsiveness, that you have responded to each one of the elements of the grant. And then there's compliance. Did you do it right? There's compliance. They said if they tell you to have 5 lines, don't do 6, don't do 4. If you do 5, you're compliant. If you do 4, you're not, and you're probably going to get kicked out. So those things matter. The fact that a person can write a good program doesn't necessarily mean that they're a good proposal writer, because the proposal writer has to take the information and make it relevant, responsive, and compliant.
All right. Cause I'll keep you here all day, because my brain is getting expanding. I'm gonna keep you here all day, because I live for this kind of knowledge. So, all right. So let's flip it real quick.
My Monday, every Monday from 5 to 6, every Monday from 5 to 6, I do like a big questions and answer session. People just dial in and whatever they want to know all week, what they heard on TV. I have every Monday from 5 to 6, I have a room full of Zoom people asking me questions, whether they're starting to write their grants and they're having problems and they can't figure it out, whatever. I do that every Friday. Every Monday from 5 to 6.
Right,
so that's the
down,
day.
Yeah,
5 to 6.
I gotta have you, because you're killing me. All right, so let's flip this thing and go on the other side, because you get to see it from both sides. You get to be the one that submits, and you get to be the one that kind of rakes over to see what's being submitted. So let's some things that you see, that some pitfalls that you see being on the other side with the grants that you receive. Let's get into a little bit of that. So what do you typically see that people fall?
Generic content. marketing content. Instead of responding to the proposal, because a grant or a proposal, it asks you very specifically about something, and it tells you how they want to see it. They'll tell you how many pages. They'll say, compare this to this. But you got some people who go out and pull out their old proposal off the shelf and just send it in. They don't respond to the questions. All an RFP is you responded to something that the government is asking you. So you can't take the proposal that Judy's, created for you last year for a grant and then just put the new information on it and send it in. That is the biggest thing. It's not relevant because you're not answering the questions that they ask. You're sending them a great big old brochure about what you can do, what you'd like to do, but you haven't done it. So if you can always match what you've done to the objectives of the funding source, that's when you're going to get their attention. So that budget, I look at some numbers. People have no idea how they came up with their numbers. I'm like, well, did you just pull the numbers out of the sky? Okay, you say it's $6,000. Okay, how did you come up with that number? Well, I don't know. I just thought it was it's budget. Don't know how to create a budget. Don't know how to do pricing. Don't know, and unit pricing is the most important. Like for training, how do you know how much to charge? Is it what is your unit? Is it per person or is it per class? Because a class, if you are doing training and you charging $100 per person to get $1,000 for 10, what happens if only 8 show up? Is the price still 100? Or are you not going to have a class? If you don't know how to answer that question, then your unit is not per person. Your unit is 10. And you're only going to have the class if 10 people show up. And so that needs to be known and talked about in your delivery. Minimum number to attend. So Mr. Joe, when he sends his $100 and nobody else did, he won't be mad at you thinking that he's supposed to get some training and he can't help it if somebody else didn't show up. You got to be very, very clear about that. And the same thing with grant writing.
Oh man. Okay. That's wow. So what I'm gathering, you don't try to kill me today with all this overflow. My Mondays are supposed to be light, and you made my Monday heavy because I got all this stuff on my brain now, and I'm trying to make sure I ask questions from people. All right. So basically, what I gathered from this is ultimately easier to kind of go ahead and experiment if you can with the program you want to create. And I'll go back to the after school program thing. Especially for my church friends, you have a church and you want an after school program, go ahead and implement it at a small level so you can get an idea of what it costs to fund it, what it'll cost to operate it. So that way, when you solicit grant writing or solicit going for grants, you have real working numbers. So that
exactly,
you can say,
real working numbers, and you got results. You're talking about results. Now, another way that can be achieved is through your employment history. Now, if you are a counselor, okay, and you have helped people, through your counseling, and you now want to do that as a business, now but you still have results. You just did it as employment, as working for DFACS. I work with Department of Family and Children, and I noticed that there's a disparity among African-American children being adopted versus blah, 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 blah. And because of my profession, I've noticed a need. And because of my profession, I believe that I can meet this need, and this is why. When I work with this family, this is what I did. I did this, this, and this. So sometimes your employment has positioned you in a place where you know something that you have identified a need. And sometimes the need, especially if it's well thought out and well chronicled, you don't know. In that case, you may not have had experience, but you have had enough experience through your position to have drawn a conclusion that something is needed. And the next part to that is, how did you do it inside of your job? And if you could say, or maybe that's the disparity. Maybe that's what you're asking funding for, is to get more information to determine if this type of thing is needed in all communities or just yours. You'll see something called unsolicited grants. And that's where people say, you know what? You got a good idea? Okay, well, send us an idea. Now, in that case, you send them an idea, what you think, why you need the funding, and what you would want the funding to be able to speak to. In that case, then, you know, you're really not looking at results because you don't have any, but there is a need so inherent that somebody needs to address it.
So, but in that space, can that also be an opportunity for a grant? I mean, for a what's the other thing we talked about? For contract.
Contract, yeah.
In that same space.
Typically, contracts require past performance.
Okay.
Yeah. Contracts typically, they require past performance, and typically, because they're buying something and they want to know that what they are buying, they can count on, and they're not just spending money on someone hoping. So that's why on contracts and RFPs, there's always a past performance requirement. It's not always first. Sometimes they'll tell you that technical approach is stronger than past performance, meaning if you got a great idea, I value your idea more than I do past performance, but it's still going to be great. You're still going to get a number. I'm just letting you know, especially when someone else is doing the work. Let's just say, X company is doing the work and you think you can do it better and they come out with a bid, then you might not have past performance because, of course, they got past performance, but you can tell them what a great idea you have to do what they're doing, and then you use the past performance that you had doing something similar somewhere else, because they're going to only be the ones that have past performance at that particular location. You're going to have past performance and having done that as another location, but because the government said technical approach is more important than past performance, that's when you know they're really, really looking for good ideas. They're really, really looking for good ideas when they say technical is more important than technical approach. Than past performance.
All right. So tell everybody how to get in touch with you. Tell them about the great stuff that you do.
Okay.
Go for it.
Well, I'm always doing workshops and consultations, especially since COVID and we're all kind of stuck in the house. But I've got all of my stuff is on my Instagram page. I do a lot of interacting on my Instagram page, and that is Ms. Contracts and Grants. That's MZ Contracts and Grants. And I'm on Instagram, and I do a lot of content. I've gotten a lot of people. I just help every day. I'll wake up in the morning and I'll come up with a little tip that you need to know. So a lot of people have been really, really showing a lot of appreciation. Also, if you click on the link in my bio, it gives you all of the workshops and all of the free stuff and all of the templates and things that you need that I think that I can help you with. We've got a workshop coming up on Friday just for arts, film, and entertainment. And that entire hour, I'm going to do nothing but sit down and walk you through where to find the grants. It's going to be it's not me talking. So bring your computers. I'm going to say, go here. You're going to click on it. We're going to go through them. And I'm going to say, okay, go here, do this, and go here, do that. And if I find out that enough people have like, okay, I did that. Now what? And we need to do another step, small bite-sized pieces. Then I'll do another step and say, okay, now that you've identified the opportunity, this is what we're going to do now. Now we're going to look at the eligibility requirements to determine whether or not you should even go after it. So if I find out there's enough for a series, I'll do something like that. But on Friday, arts, film, and entertainment, I'm going to tell you where all of the grants are. Ms. Contracts and Grants on Instagram.
Anything you want to leave with the people, thought process or anything, any steps you want to leave with them? I usually ask you, they have like some steps, 1, 2, 3. Because people tend to remember 1, 2, 3 type thing.
Yep.
Anything you want to leave with the people?
At the end of the day, if you're going to look for grants or contracts, be consistent. And I think I probably have one, and that is it's always a numbers game. Be consistent in looking for funding, whether it's government contracts, grants, or cooperative agreements. If you don't spend at least 1 hour a day looking for funding, I'm bothered by that, because if you're going to have a nonprofit organization, clearly you knew you had to go after funding. It just can't start with a vision. Mm-hmm. It just can't. You got to have more. You got to have some execution.
Fact. All facts.
Okay.
All right, everybody. So there you have it, Mrs. Linda Chatmon. Oh my God! Like I feel like I've been washed in knowledge today. Like I feel like I've been washed in knowledge today. So I am so elated, so honored to have you here. We're going to definitely have to do, you playing around, I'm going to do a part 2 and 3.
I
One
don't
for
have a problem
contract,
doing that.
one for something else, because it's amazing information. I know I'm going to get bombarded when we're done. I know I am.
That's all right. Just tell them that. In fact, they can sign up when they go to Miss Contracts and Grants. I'm doing my free QA session tonight. So if there's something that they wanted me to elaborate on that I talked about today, this afternoon, I'll be glad to do it.
I'm going to send them to you. I'm not asking no more questions about this. I found an expert. I'm asking no more questions about this. All right, you hold on for me. Everybody, thank you for tuning in to the Leadership Blend. I will see you probably either Friday or Monday. You'll see the flyer. Same time, same place on the Leadership Blend with your host,